Okay, so I have a fairly long document today, but feel free to go off mute and ask questions and stuff like that. I don't want this to be too torturous. So can everybody see the New Yorker cartoon?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So, and I put this into the chat, and Judy will send it around later. What we're talking about today is specific to the Gmail or Google email system. Again, just like yesterday, a lot of this does work to some extent on the portable devices, but I'm kind of orienting this towards computers, laptops, desktops, whether Mac or PC, that's going to be the same. And so what we're talking about today is how to organize email that's coming in the way that you may want to organize files on your computer. They're sort of two different worlds though. And in the Gmail world, you have what are called labels, which are, if you think about files and folders, on your computer, every file can only be in one folder. And in fact, every file is in exactly one folder because the top of the computer is considered a folder.
Oh,
Yes? Hello?
no.
So where labels in the Gmail world are a little different. They look sort of like folders, but an email message can have more than one label, as we'll see a little bit along the way. So they're more powerful rather than being a straight hierarchy. Each email can have any number of labels. And so, for example, I have a message here that I've added 3 labels to: inbox, friends, and save. Those are displayed as these little gray buttons, okay? And each one has an X. So if you want to take off a label, all you have to do is click on the little X, okay? And so a lot of times when you click on the inbox, you don't realize that's actually treated as a label, and you'll, when you have multiple labels, you'll see the inbox there. Okay. And the Google email system has 3 kinds of labels that we'll talk about later on. There's system labels that automatically come with Gmail. There's also automated categories that I'm not going to talk about too much today, but that's where it automatically looks at your email and says, this looks like a promotion, or other kinds of categories. And then you also have labels that you can add yourself, which is what we're really talking about today. Okay, so you can just drag a message out of your inbox when you see the list of messages over to a label, and it will add that label and remove the inbox. But it's normally easier to use a couple of buttons on the email we'll talk about in a minute, called move to and labels buttons. Okay, that's the normal way you deal with labels. So let's talk about a situation here where I've got a whole bunch of messages from Senior Planet, and I've decided I want to organize those so they're easy to pull up together, and I want to do that by creating a Senior Planet label, okay? And the easiest way to do that is to click one of these 2 buttons. The one with a little dark, you know, it looks like a folder with an arrow on it, is the Move To button. And the one to the right of it that looks sort of like a right arrow or whatever you want to call that, that is the Labels button. And I'll talk about the difference between those in a minute. So if we want to take this message out of the inbox and move it to a new label, we click the Move To button, that thing that's a folder with an arrow on it, and up comes a little pop-up menu that shows me all the labels I've already got, and I can choose one of those, or I can come down here and click on Create New, and that is used for creating a new label. Can everybody see that? So this is Create New. And this is part of the Move To pop-up window, which I got by clicking on the Move To button while I'm looking at a message in my inbox. Okay. And then up will come this little pop-up window that lets you give the new label a name. And I type in Senior Planet right there. And I click the Create button. And that will create a new label. Okay, and then what happens then, since I've created a new label for it, is that message is now over in this new label, which will appear on this left sidebar list of labels. So here you see Senior Planet now appears, and if I click on that label, then it will display all of the messages with that label. For those of you that were here yesterday, you see that it also showed a search called label : Senior Planet, because the label : is how you specify you want to search for labels. Okay, and if we click on this right here to open that message we just moved, we'll see it now has a brand new label called Senior Planet. So that's the beginning of our story of moving stuff into a new label. We have to create the label. In this case, we did it with the Move To button. And I'll show you, you can also do that through the labels button. Okay, so let's say that we have another message we want to move to Senior Planet. When I click the Move To button now, Senior Planet is one of the options that I will see. And I just click on that and it disappears from the inbox. And now all of a sudden, if I click on Senior Planet, I not only have the first message, but also the second message will appear here. And if I go and look at that message, it also has the Senior Planet label, just like the first one did. Okay. So far, so good. So what we're doing is very similar to if these were just straight folders. We're moving them from the inbox to this new label. Okay. If instead of using the Move To button, I use the Labels button, it's very similar. It has the Create New option, and it shows you all of your labels. So if I did a third message and instead of using Move To, I used the Labels button and clicked on Senior Planet, then what happens is it doesn't leave the inbox, and up at the top of the message, I would now see two labels, Inbox and Senior Planet, because Labels lets you add or remove labels as you wish. And that's how you could label something with several labels at once. And the Move To is just like that, except it also gets rid of the inbox. Okay, so now if I go to the Senior Planet label down here, sometimes people call these folders, sometimes they call them labels. As long as you understand that it can be in multiple places, that's all that matters. So if I click here, I now see all three messages there. If I go and click on that, I will now see the two labels, Inbox and Senior Planet, and that appears when I look at it either in the inbox or in Senior Planet. Okay, now I'm looking at it through the Senior Planet label, that's search. And now if I want to take it out of the inbox, all I really need to do is click that little X on the right side of the inbox label. And what that means is I don't want to see it in the inbox anymore. Okay. So any questions on that so far? Okay. It's really not all that complicated.
Yes,
And
I have a question.
it's very handy. Sure.
Is this this labeling the same as a smart mailbox?
Not quite. Gmail is doing this stuff like through categories and spam, where it's automatically assigning things to the email and you don't have to do anything. What we're talking about here is you manually assigning labels to emails. So that's the difference. That's a good question.
Thank you.
And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the sort of smart labels, if you will, later.
Dave, we do have a question about putting more than one label on an email.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what was the question?
How to put more than one label?
Yeah, you could just use the labels button, okay, and just add as many as you want, okay. So if you open the labels button on something that's already labeled, it'll show you the labels that are already on that message on the top with check boxes that are checked, and you can check as many of these as you want, and then you click apply and it'll add as many as you want. So it's easy to add extra labels to a message just with the labels button, because you don't want to, the move to is like that, but it also gets it out of the inbox. But if I went into one of these messages here under Senior Planet and I also wanted to add, you know, another label like this MISC label or whatever, I could easily do that with the labels button. I can show that to you live here in a minute.
Can you?
Well, I think you're muted.
Oh, yes. Can you repeat how you got one email to go into inbox and Senior Planet?
Sure.
I just tried it and I did Senior Planet, but I don't have it as inbox. It just says Senior Planet.
Right. Well, it depends on which of those buttons. Let me go back up to the button display. It depends on which button you pressed. There we go. So when you're in your inbox, there's these two different buttons. This one will take it out of the inbox and this one won't. So if you click this button and you created a new label called Senior Planet, that's what I was showing in the document.
Right, that's what I did.
Yeah, then that's going to take it out of the inbox because you use this move to button, the one with the little arrow on it. If you wanted to leave it in the inbox, you can use this labels thing. And if you want to add the inbox, that is an option through a button when you look at it in another label. There's a move to inbox button, and there's also the labels button where you could click on inbox to give it the inbox label again, if you want to keep it in both.
Dave, could I ask a question? This is Lori. Hi. Once I read emails, they often will, if I go to one of those buttons, it will say move to inbox, as if it's no longer in my inbox. And sometimes there's an inbox label, and sometimes the inbox label has disappeared.
Right. Well, when you're in your inbox reading something, it won't leave the inbox by itself. If you move it somewhere else to another label and you look at it, there will be a option to move it to the inbox, which actually doesn't take away the other label. It just adds as the inbox label.
Got it. Can I ask one more?
How you got to where you are, I don't know. I'd have to actually, we could work together and you could show that to me so I can follow more how you got there, but it shouldn't be moving it out of the inbox. It's possible there's a Gmail setting that automatically does that. There is a notion of archiving, which just says, I don't want it in the inbox anymore, and it puts it, you'll see it under all emails, but you won't see it in the inbox.
That was
my normally have to do some kind of an action to get it out of the inbox.
Got it. If I archive something, I never knew how I could retrieve it. So
yeah, it's in the all emails.
Got it.
Label on the side. Yep.
Thank you.
Dave, we've got a question.
Where I was. Sure.
So, oh, I lost it. Wait a minute.
So if are you talking about the
label button one?
Yeah. So what the person was asking is, if you delete an email,
Mhm.
will it be deleted from all other folders? And yes, you
Well,
delete it, it's deleted.
Okay, if you, it depends on how you do it. It's a good question. If you're, and I'm actually going to show that to you a little bit later, but if you click on a trash can, what that does actually is just add the trash label to the email, and it will appear in the trash and will not be visible under the other labels. But you'll actually still see, if you go into the trash and look at it, it hasn't forgotten that it had those labels. But it's essentially like moving it to the trash label. If you go into the trash itself, and I'll show that to you a little later, the option there is delete. And delete there means I don't want it anymore. I don't want it inside the trash can. I want it gone. And once it's gone, it's gone. Does that answer the question? Okay. And maybe I can do some live demos of that stuff to in a minute to just check on the time. We're in good shape so far. Okay. So if I have something that's in two places, you know, I can see this in the inbox and I can see it in Senior Planet, but I don't want it in the inbox anymore. All I have to do is click this X next to this label. You can do this on any label and it will remove it from the inbox. Okay, so now that I've created the Senior
Dave?
Planet, yes.
Dave, Judy Davis has a hand up.
Oh, oh,
Just
great.
wanted to check
Oh,
before.
thanks so much. Really quick. I hope, and again, I don't want to interrupt, but maybe if you could address at a certain point, and I'm sorry, I had a little trouble signing in. I know yesterday you did a wonderful workshop and you said there are ways of setting things up automatically
Right.
that we don't even, and maybe have you already done that, or maybe you'll get
No,
that?
that's actually next week.
Oh, that's next week.
We're doing a whole series of things.
Okay, and is that
And
what?
I've
what
forgotten
way?
what Judy calls it, but in the Gmail world, it's called filters. And it's
Yeah.
normally considered it a really advanced topic, but it's really not complicated.
I'll
But
make sure that it's in the date and the link are in the follow-up email. So anybody who wants a
Yeah.
follow-up email, remember, put your email in the chat.
Okay,
So
great.
that's a great question, because what I'm talking about here is not automatic or automagic stuff. I'm talking about manual things for labeling and organizing. And then next week, we'll talk about automated ways of doing stuff like applying labels or getting stuff to skip the inbox and just go to the label and stuff like that.
And the other thing, real quick, when I move it to a fold, when I move it, I've always felt like I need to hold it and drag it to the label I want. And is that true? Is there another way of doing it that's just so awkward?
Yeah, you came in a little late. There's a couple of buttons at the top of each email message. Let me find the buttons. Here we go.
Thank you so much.
So can you see this? So
Yes.
there's two buttons that are very important. This one's called Move To.
Okay.
And what that means is I want to apply a label and get it out of the inbox.
Right.
And that's the equivalent of the dragging operation. A lot of people, particularly older people, have trouble with dragging. So I'm not even, I mentioned it here that you can do that, but that's actually not what I would consider the easiest way of doing it. The buttons, I think, are much easier.
And then when you
because when you're dragging things, it's too easy to let up and it just does weird stuff.
Great. So if you hit that, then it'll give you the choice. It'll ask you which folder you want to put it in.
Exactly. So
Thank you so much.
this gives you a list of your labels, or lets you create a new one.
Perfect.
You can see this if you go back over this document.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So let me go
He
back
is
to where I
wonderful, isn't
was.
he?
Any more before I keep blabbing here? Okay. All right, then I'll keep going. So now I've got these 3 email messages under Senior Planet, but let's say, oh, I really would like to just get all of Judy's emails under there. Okay, so now we're getting into the organizing part, right? So yesterday we saw that you can find all the messages from a particular person by just saying from : and their email address. And you can also get that by clicking this little down arrow on the search thing, and it has a form where one of them is from. But it's just going to generate this search string. And in this case, I have 45 messages when I threw this together. And you can see that there are 45 because after I did the search, you see where this arrow is, it says 1 to 45 of 45. So it found 45 messages that match this search, which means they came from Judy. And so what I can do is I want to select all of these messages after I do the search. And the way to do that is you just click on this checkbox, which is above all the messages, okay, and that will select them all. There's actually options for selecting other things like unread and read and whatnot, but normally just click that to select all of them. And they all change to having a blue background. I can show this to you live in a few minutes if we have time. And then what we do is we click on the labels, okay, the labels button. And I've got so many labels that in order to make this easy, I typed in senior and it did a little search through my labels and found Senior Planet. It has a minus here because 3 of these already, or 2 or 3 of these already came from Judy and already have that label. So this gives me the option of getting rid of the Senior Planet label from all these things I've selected. But what I want to do is actually add it. So I check it and it turns into a checkbox. And then I have to click apply. And then what happens is if I click on the Senior Planet, you'll see I've now got 46. Some of those were the ones I had already labeled, and then I just labeled all the rest of them. Okay? So that's a quick way to search for a bunch of emails and give them all a label all at the same time.
Dave?
Yeah.
If you do it, I love that. I didn't know I could do that way. If I do it, they will still retain the inbox label, won't they?
It doesn't change any of their other labels. Each of those messages can have any number of labels, and I don't care. I'm adding the label Senior Planet to all of them. I'm not doing anything about getting rid of labels. I could have in that search look for other things that had a minus and say I want to get rid of some other label, but I'm just, in this case, adding that label.
So if I had that same list of searched emails and I wanted to get rid of the inbox label.
Yeah, if you click on labels, I'd have to double check that that works that way, but there should actually be an inbox that you could uncheck. Or there may very well be an archive button. It just depends on exactly your context when you did that.
Got it.
Dave, from my experience, you have to click the archive button once you have them grouped, once you've searched and you have that list that you want to do. You have to click the archive button to get rid of the inbox. I have not seen it in the label options.
It's a little bit funky as to where the inbox shows up in your labels list. If it doesn't, there will be a button called archive. And what archive means in Gmail, that means get rid of the inbox label. Those are exactly the same thing. Thanks, Mike.
That piece of knowledge was worth a visit, that alone.
Yeah, I mean, what does archive mean, right? Well, now you know. Okay, so now that I've got those 46 messages in there, well, let me add in everything that came from Oates. So I repeat this process and I do a search from, in this case, I don't care who it was at oates.org, so I just put in @oates.org, right? There's nothing to the left of the @ sign. And when you search for things, it will say, does this string exist inside the string of the sender, in this case? So Judy at oates.org or anyone else at info@oates.org, it doesn't matter. Anything that has @oates.org in the email address is good enough. And it will, here it found 70 of them. I know that because it tells me, okay? And then I just do the same thing. I click the labels button and I add in Senior Planet, and I now have all of those together. And that's how you can organize your email into labels, and then use those labels to find things more easily. Because a lot of times when you're searching for something and you know that it's inside of a label, it's much easier to start by clicking on the label. That gives you the search string label : whatever the name of the label is. And then you can add more stuff onto it. Like, I think I showed that yesterday. I was looking for something from Judy that talked about a particular class. I don't even remember which one it was. But I looked for a word that was inside of the things that I had already found. So if I wanted to go into Senior Planet and look for stone balancing, I could click on Senior Planet and then add stone balancing to the end of the search string, and it would limit the distant emails that talked about stone balancing. Does that help? Okay, so now I can get back to this with more questions, but I wanted to just briefly go over these system labels. Some of this came up yesterday, and just so you have a rough idea of what this stuff is about. So there are a bunch of system labels. The inbox you already know about, that's where your new email comes in. Starred, we're going to talk about in a minute. That's emails you've marked with a star. Snooze is emails that came into your inbox, but you want to not look at them now, but look at them later. I'll show you how that works. Important is one of these automated things that we talked about, the sort of magic labels, where Google has decided that this looks like an important message. Chats is Gmail chats, which we're not going to talk about. Sent is all the messages that you have sent. So they may show up depending on how you display in group messages. You may see them in other places, but if you want to just look for things you've sent, you can click on the sent label. Scheduled is emails where you don't want to send it right away, you want to schedule it for later. I'll show you how that works. Drafts is anytime you start to compose a message and you don't delete it, it automatically gets saved to drafts. And a lot of times people are surprised at how many drafts they've got because they just started writing and forgot all about it. But if you start writing and then you click on something and it goes away, don't worry, it's in the drafts. It saves everything automatically. All email is everything except what's in the trash. Spam is another automated label where email has decided that this is a dangerous email. It might have a bad link. It's called a phishing email. These PH instead of F, so it's not something you catch in a stream. This is phishing emails are bad emails somebody sends to you, try to get you to click on a link or open a file, and then the idea there is to add a virus to your computer or get some information from you. These are dangerous emails that are often used in identity theft and things like that. So when Gmail sees anything that looks suspicious, they get marked as spam. And trash are the ones you've actually deleted by clicking on the trash can. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit about a few of these. But one thing to notice, and this is really confusing to people, when you look at your list of labels, this little number here is not the number of messages of that label, it's the number of unread messages. Okay, that's very important. So spam here has 10 messages that I have not read. Okay, I haven't clicked on them to look at them. Okay, so one of the system labels is starred. This is a handy one if you just want to mark something and say, well, I might want to get back to this later. Then you click on this little star that's on the email message, and it turns into a green checkbox, and then it will show up if you click on the starred label on the left. So it's just like a regular label, except it sort of has its own button called this star button. Okay. And I find that useful, like if I have webinars that I'm planning on seeing in the next week or so, and I have emails about them, I'll star those so I have an easy way to find them. And I don't give it a formal label because I'll get rid of the star after the webinar is over, that kind of thing. Okay, snoozed is another special button.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you star an email, does it go out of your inbox?
No, it's just adding the star. That's a great question. Thank you. Another special button that you'll see just in your inbox is this snooze. The idea is I've got a lot of emails. I don't want to deal with this one right now. I will go ahead and snooze it, and it will come back into my inbox later. So if you click on the snooze button, you specify when you want it to come back. And then what'll happen is it'll go out of your inbox and go over here to this snoozed label that's on the left-hand side. I don't use that one myself. I have different ways of dealing with the inbox, but that might be handy for you. As I mentioned before, if you compose a message and never click the send, it is automatically saved to the drafts. You'll see a little pop-up notification come up saying save to drafts sometimes. But you don't have to worry about having to retype a message because they're automatically saved to drafts. And then you can go in and delete the ones that you really don't want anymore at some point. Scheduled is another system label, and that's related to the send button. So when you're composing a message, if you click on this little arrow to the right side of the send button, up pops this schedule send. So it means I don't want to send it now, I want to send it later. And then you again specify when you want it, either one of these choices, or you can pick a date and time. And then you'll see it show up under this scheduled label. Okay, I'm going through this pretty fast, but you'll all get the document. And I think the idea here is not to remember the details, just to remember this stuff is there somewhere. And if I figure I want to try it, I can try it later. So don't worry too much about the details. Again, spam is email that Gmail thinks is dangerous. And this is a really great feature because it's real easy to get something that looks like an invoice from somebody, and you click on it, and it might even take you to a website that looks like their website. But if you look at the details, you're being fooled. Okay, so anything that looks suspicious, or it has a attached file that might say that it's a picture, but when you click on it, it's actually an executable file. This is more of a problem on Windows than the Mac, but you can get viruses by opening files. So you really want to be careful. And that's what spam means, okay? And if you get an email message that you consider to be junk or spam, there's a special button for that. That's this thing that is looks like a stop sign with an exclamation mark. And that is the spam button. And when you click on that in your inbox, then it will pop up a little thing. There's actually two different messages. This is one where it found a link on the email that said unsubscribe. So you have the choice of just saying, I want to report this as spam, or if you click over here, it will report it as spam and also click on the unsubscribe link, which will take you to whatever page that takes you to.
Dave?
I have another question.
Yes.
I'm always afraid if I open an email and I'm not sure if it's spam to unsubscribe, because then I think that
Right.
that something's going to happen that way.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, I tend to, if I have subscribed to something, and I know I'm getting this because I've subscribed to it, then I will have a tendency to go ahead and unsubscribe when I no longer want it. I also do a thing of applying a filter so I don't see them anymore. I'll talk about that next week. If I
Okay.
get an email from somebody I've never heard of, and I didn't sign up for this, I will not unsubscribe. Because that, when you click on these things, it often has a link that embeds your email address into it in a funny way. So it knows who it is that's unsubscribing, and they may be just trying to see who's got it. You know, they might have bought 1 million email addresses and they want to know which ones are still valid, right? And so when you click on the unsubscribe list, you've now told them that you're ready to get more emails. And
Yeah,
so
that's why I'm afraid of.
I would use a rule of saying, if you signed up for it, it's probably safe to unsubscribe. If you don't remember signing up for it, don't bother. Okay, and I'll show you a better way of dealing with that next week.
Thank you.
Dave, this is Lori. If I
Hello.
report it as spam, does that have an impact on the sender? Or is that just for my mailbox?
Well, it does have an impact in that it's telling Google that you think this is spam. And it uses that not only to apply that as a rule to you, but it also will say, oh, well, I have a lot of people that have reported this as spam. And so there's a better chance of that person's emails going into spam for other users as well.
I get about 200 to 300 political solicitations a
Right.
day.
Uh-huh.
So I don't, and they're candidates that I don't want to do bad
Sure.
things to them.
Yeah, the thing I'm going to do next week, I'll show you how to fix that.
Excellent.
Because I have the same problem. Yeah, once you've ever given anybody money, that's saying, I want 10, 20, 30, 50 emails a day soliciting more money. Yes.
Dave, we have
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, Manette.
We have a question. Judy Davis has her hand up.
Oh,
And
thank
then
you.
we also have a question from Doris Burns in the chat. So
Great.
Thank you so much. So again, this is so helpful. This I have tried to unsubscribe from different emails, and they don't unsubscribe me, like Home Advisor or something.
Yep.
But again, I don't want to be
Yeah.
mean to them, but would it help
Oh.
if I reported it as spam? I mean, I probably did subscribe once. But
Again, I'll sort of defer to my talk next week. I don't report them as spam if I originally asked for that. I do a different thing, which I'll describe
Okay.
next week.
Thanks so much. Perfect.
So you don't have to worry about giving them a bad rap.
Perfect. Thanks.
So,
Perfect.
yeah, what was the other
And
question?
then we have a question from Doris about Norton Security.
Yeah.
If you have Norton Security, would emails be protected in all system labels?
If you have a antivirus, a security system, what that is going to protect you from, well, they have, what originally they would protect you from is when you open a file in your email system, it will catch that and take a look at the file first, and then not let you open bad files, at least theoretically. Okay. The best way to cure that problem is to not try to open the file. Okay. But if you do open a file, it will get scanned before it's opened. They also have systems where they're looking, or some of these security systems can look for bad links and try to protect you from following bad links. But as I say, the best solution to this is just being super careful. As I mentioned yesterday, all of these different browsers, whether it's on a phone or an iPad or a tablet, an Android tablet or a PC or a Mac, you always have a way of seeing where a link is before you click on it. In the case of browsers, you can add what's normally called a status bar. And when you hover over a link, the link address is put in the status bar. And I strongly recommend that if you're looking at an email that you may not completely trust, always make sure you look at where you're going to go before you click on a link. But I can talk about that later on separately if that's not clear. Okay, how are we doing? We got 15 minutes
Well,
left.
yeah, Dave, do you want to keep going, or are there a lot more questions that need to
Yeah,
be?
why don't we hold those for the moment? I've
Okay.
got about another 5 minutes here, and then we can spend as much time as people want with questions.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I want to talk about now is how do you control which labels you see? I did talk about Gmail settings and went over this a little bit last week. But the idea here is sort of two ways of doing it. I'll show you both of them. One way is you click on this gear, which is in the upper right of all the email messages, and you pick settings and do see all settings. And then that will bring up a settings page, and that has a labels link on the top that takes you to the labels page. We talked about this last week. And then what you see here is at the top of that are all of your system labels that we talked about. And if you've got a blue link here, then you can either hide or show. So here I've got, you saw that starred shows up for me, but if I didn't want to see it anymore, I could just click hide. And while you do that, you will see these labels appearing and disappearing on the left of this display that I'm showing you here. So that's how you, if you don't want to see all of these system labels, you can hide the ones that you don't use, okay? And then a couple of these, like drafts and spam, have special cases of you only want to see the spam label if there's an unread message in it, that kind of stuff. Okay, that's what the hide and show links are for on the labels page. Under that are the categories, which I haven't really talked about today. These are automatic labels like social and promotions and so on. I don't use these. I don't find them personally helpful. So I just hide all of them. Okay, that's why all the show labels are blue. And if you hide all of them, you don't see that or a thing that says categories on the left. And then finally, you'll see your own labels down in the next section of the labels page. And this will give you links here to just remove the label. If you remove a label, that doesn't remove the email. It just takes the label off all of those emails that have it. Okay, that's important. You're not deleting anything, but you are getting rid of that label. You can also do an edit to change its name. You can control whether you see it, that kind of stuff. Okay. And then you may have noticed when we created the labels that it had the option to nest it under something else. So I'll talk about this next week, but I automatically filter messages that are email lists I've subscribed to into a general category called to read. Some of those go into this top level to read, and others go into specialized labels that are nested under to read. For example, news, or I subscribe to a bunch of recipe emails, and so when recipes come in, and I know they're from that website, and those get automatically put into this label. So this is what nesting is talking about. And each of these labels could have further labels nested under it. There's actually, when you edit a label, one of the things you can do is actually change it to be nested under a different label. Okay. So just know that this exists, and if you want to organize your labels, just like we're organizing your email, that's how you do it in Gmail. You do it by nesting. And this little triangle here lets you show or hide the nested labels under a label. So if I clicked on this, it would just say to read with a triangle pointing to the right, and all of these guys would not be displayed. Okay, and then I'll talk about Gmail filters next week. Finally, I didn't want to finish up without telling you another way of doing this. So when you look at your labels, this isn't available on the system labels, but on your labels, you'll see 3 little dots appear. And if you click on that, up comes this pop-up that gives you a bunch of standard editing features, like you can edit it to change its name, you can show or hide it, you can get rid of it, you can add a new nested label, and so on and so forth. And then you can also give it a color. So if you want the little labels not to be gray, but to be a different color, then you can click on one of these colors and it will be that color over here on the left. And when you look at an email message, it'll get that color on the email as well. Okay, good. So let me stop the share a moment so we can see each other. How am I doing? Ah, got 10 minutes left. Okay. It's a long document, but I sort of view these like cartoons. They're mostly pictures. So
Could you explain what your category probably trash is? That sounds valuable.
yeah, that's actually part of what I'm going to talk about next week.
Okay.
What I do is, and it's related to your earlier question. So what I do is anytime I subscribe to something and I decide I really don't want this anymore, okay, I will unsubscribe and then add a filter that will get it out of the inbox and to the probably trashed label. So I don't want to just delete it. I want to give myself a chance to look over that stuff. And so I get probably 100 of those a day, okay, because I've either unsubscribed and they didn't listen to me and they're still sending me this junk, okay, or it might just be, you know, if you give money to anybody, they will sell your email to other politicians, and you'll start getting stuff from people you've never heard of. And so you can treat that as spam, or I usually just treat it as probably trash. And so if I show you my probably trash folder, I can do a little live thing here if we have time. You'll see tons of political solicitations and charity solicitations. So I tend to do my charity stuff later in the year for the ones I don't do every month. And so if they're sending me stuff all the time, I will get to a point where I just say, okay, fine, you're now probably trash. Okay, that's what that means. Does that help?
Yes.
And I'll show you how to do that next week.
So
Dave, before you go into questions, I just want to know that there's quite a number of you that were on the call yesterday. Did you receive my email yesterday, my follow-up email? You did. Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, I had put this.
One of the things I want to just recommend. Oh, wait 1 second, Dave. One of the things I want to just recommend is that sometimes, though, check your junk, or I mean your spam or junk folders, just in case something didn't come through. So anyway, go ahead, Manette and Dave.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, Arlene has her hand
Yes.
up.
Is there, since I didn't know you had this on yesterday, is there a way I can get the handout from yesterday?
Yes,
Sure.
I'll send you the recording and the handout. So I will include a link to a document that has all of our recordings and all of our handouts by date listed. And so you can just pick and choose whatever you want.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
if you're up for the masochist merit badge, you can watch the recording.
So, Dave, you covered color coding the labels. Is there any way to color code the actual email for people who maybe vision acuity? It would be easier if they could see on the email side.
That's a good question. So let me see if I understand your question. So you'd want it in the inbox color coded. Is that right? Well, you certainly can add a filter that automatically applies a label which has a color, and you will see it in the list of emails. So when you look at your list of emails, you probably didn't notice, but actually the labels that are on them are visible. And so if you wanted to, let's say you wanted to make sure you never missed a message from Monette, you could create a filter that is a don't miss label that's red, or read this label or whatever you want to call it, right? And then make a filter that says if it comes from Monette, leave it in the inbox, but add this, read this red label. And then when you look at them and look at the list of email messages, that'll pop up as a little red label.
So right now, the only way is through the labels.
Yeah, I don't know of any other color coding other than labels. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. It just means I don't know about any. Yeah. Okay, anybody else have their hand up? Okay, well, I guess we can go over some chat ones if there are any. Otherwise, I can sort
I
of
have a question.
live demo a little bit of this stuff.
Go ahead, Jan.
I just wanted, this is only on the laptop. It's not on my iPhone. These
They,
labels and
yeah, actually they are on the iPhone and the iPad. It's just, again, like we did on yesterday's talk, there's more stuff that you can do easily on the laptop than on the, but you can definitely apply labels to email messages, and it's a cut down set of label features, I would say. But there definitely are, any label that you apply on one device will show up on all your devices.
As long as you're in the Gmail. If you're using,
I'm strictly talking about the Gmail system.
yeah.
Now, this can be used on non-Gmail addresses. I talked about that the other day. You can look at other types of email through the Gmail program, the Gmail interface. But what I'm talking about is the Gmail system. Yeah.
But on the phone, I only see like 4 things at the bottom, which is like archive and put it in a folder.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to come in on Tuesday for the Apple Addicts on iPhones and iPads, I can go and demo that. Or if there's time later today before we break off, I can pop my phone in. The phone, as I was mentioning yesterday, for me, since I have a Mac, I have a computer, the Gmail system is very, very powerful on the computer. Or if you looked at it on an iPad through the browser, through Safari or Chrome, and you went to gmail.com, you would get exactly what we're talking about. But if you use their application, the Gmail application on a portable device, it will not have as much power, as many features. But you definitely can add labels. You can get rid of labels. You can do some of the settings, not all of them.
Okay, thanks.
On my Gmail, at the top, there's a promotions area, and some emails just automatically go in there. And I didn't. Is that something?
Yeah, I talked about that on the settings talk. There is these automatic categories. This is the same categories I was talking about today.
Okay.
And there's a thing if you go to the settings and all settings, the little gear, and go to all settings, there's a page there called Inbox. And you get to control if you see those tabs over your inbox. And since I don't want to see them, I turn them off. And so you can just hide those, and then you won't see the categories on the top of your inbox.
And will those emails go into my inbox then?
Yeah. Again, the funny thing here, when you have this sort of hierarchical folder mindset, the funny thing is to realize it doesn't matter how many labels you have. So on an email message. So if it's marked as social or promotion or whatever, it's still marked as inbox. Okay. And you can have multiple. So that's sort of a funny thing to get your head around. But sort of once you have the lobotomy and you're able to see things this way, then it's obvious, right?
Okay, thanks.
Let me show you what I'm talking about real quickly.
Hello.
Yes. So yeah, if I go to so I've actually got one of the labels that I use for my subscriptions is coupons. So this is one from Natural Grocers. So if I go up here to the settings, and it gives me a whole big thing, but I just say see all settings. And then I come over here to inbox. Then this categories section, can you see that? Is it big
Yes,
enough? Yeah, if you just uncheck all of these, it shows you what happens. These are the tabs you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So you just come to instead of the labels part, you go to inbox and just uncheck all of these and they all go away.
Okay, thank you.
And then if you come over here to labels, this is what I was showing you on the document. Here's the categories section, and I have hidden all of them, right? And so if I show these, like let me show social. Now you notice the categories appeared, right? And if I click on the arrow, there's social. If I show the updates, right, I show the forums and so on. And then when I hide these, they go away, right? And then if I hide the last one, the whole categories thing goes away.
Okay.
It is down here. If I click on more, you can see categories here. So even though they're hidden, you have to click that more link at the very bottom to see them, because they don't show up where you'd normally see them. Okay.
Thank you.
I answer a few more questions while I'm showing you my Gmail. Any more, Monette?
Yes, there was a security question, so it's not with labels, but about using those confidential settings on the email when you're sending it out. The person wanted to send email to family or friends with password and things like that. So I put in a link to that person, but I can put in a public link to the Google Help.
Yeah, there is a way of doing that in Gmail. The way that I do it actually requires a special program. What I do is normally, if I want to send somebody something, I'll send it as a PDF file that's encrypted that has a password. Or maybe I'll send it as an Excel document with a password, or a Word document with a password. So I would use there are ways to, at least theoretically, send confidential email through Gmail, but the only way to be sure that they need a password to open it, in my opinion, is to just encrypt it. In other words, give it a password, be it a PDF file, a Word document, or a spreadsheet, and then send it to them, and don't give them the password in the same email you're sending it to them, right? If you want to give them that password, send a separate email.
Judy Davis has her hand up.
Oh, great. So wait, hang on. Oh, I think I lost you.
You're fine. Well, we can see and hear you. You're fine.
Okay, great. Thanks. So you know what I realized? So I have a Mac and I'm very new to it. And when I click on my mail, you're right, I'm not really looking at it from a Gmail perspective.
That's right.
So it sounds like what you're suggesting, I mean, this is eye-opening to me, is that everything you're teaching is about the Gmail perspective. Right. And so is there a way, and it sounds like that's a better way of organizing things. Is there a way I can set up my computer so the Gmail will always come up?
Yeah, there's sort of two things you can do, and that's all under this accounts and import. I talked about that the other way. You can go through a process of actually changing over to Gmail, in which case you want to pull in all the email messages to your new Gmail account. There's also a way to add mail accounts in here where it will keep it as a separate account, but be visible through the Gmail interface. If that's of interest to people, I can set up a time to talk about that in more detail. That's kind of a more complicated topic.
But in general, do you recommend, again, it sounds like you're saying.
Oh, well, this is totally up to you. The things that I'm,
easier for organizing.
yeah, no, the things I'm talking about are definitely available. And the mail program, MAIL, on the Mac is a perfectly reasonable email program. I use Gmail because it's a little bit more powerful, but you can, in the mail program, create folders. It doesn't really have the labels concept so much, it's more folders. But you can do 90% of what you want for sure. It's just that if you happen to use Gmail, that's what these other lectures are. Hopefully not too much of the lectures, but these other meetings are about, is if you are using Gmail, there's things you might not know that you do that are actually pretty easy to do. Like labeling and searching and things like that.
Great.
And the search stuff is more powerful in Gmail than it is in Apple Mail. The organizing is a little bit better. It's not hugely different, but you can do pretty much similar kinds of things, but it's just easier, I think, in my opinion, in Gmail. It's totally up to you as to kind of, do you have a problem that you want to solve?
Yes.
And so, I do this Apple Addicts thing that Judy puts into these emails on Tuesday and Thursday mornings for people that are addicted to Apple devices. Yes. And they're at 9:30 Mountain Time, and Tuesdays we do iPhones and iPads, and Thursdays we do Macs.
Perfect.
And so if you want to learn how to use your Mac better, you could think about joining in on Thursday mornings, and we can talk about your questions. The whole idea is whatever questions you have, probably everybody else does.
Right.
Just having
Oh,
fun.
it's such a blessing. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
So Tuesday is at 11:30 Mountain Time, but it would be
No,
1:30.
it's 9:30 Mountain Time. It's 11:30 East Coast time.
Yeah, don't worry, it'll be in your follow-up email, and it's been in your follow-up email. So if you look at your email, make sure you scroll down to see all of that information, including the hotline numbers for New York. That also is a tech helpline.
Okay. Well, I hope this was useful to people. We're in overtime, but I'm happy to stay and answer more questions as long as Judy is willing to hang out.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay,
Wonderful.
Dave. Yay, Monette.
Thanks,
Yay,
Maria.
all of us.
Yeah. So this lunchtime thing is real fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Did we have any other chat questions, Monette?
We did. They weren't on topic. So a couple of things about security. Can you encrypt Gmail? And I did put a link to Google explanation on encryption on the Gmail.
Right.
I also put in a link to Gmail support about the confidential setting that you talked about. And then we had one about, will you please include in a future class an explanation of POP, IMAP, and POP3?
Well, I can just, that's actually pretty easy. I can explain that. So, the internet is this giant billions of connected computers and other devices. Now your refrigerator's on the internet, right? So they talk about the Internet of Things, but your phone, when you're using it on the internet, is on the internet, okay? And so what data that's transferred between devices on the internet is done in terms of protocols. In other words, here's this stream of bits. How do I read this stream of bits? And POP stands for Post Office Protocol. which is just a particular format for email messages. It's the old way of doing email. And the reason it's called POP is it used to be that you had a computer in your house. You didn't have a smartphone or anything. And when you popped messages off of the email server that they came in on, they got transferred to your computer and they left the server. They usually got removed from the server and they were on your computer. If your computer had a major disk failure, you lost that email unless you backed it up. And if you were on some other computer at a friend's house, there's no way you could see your email. So a long time ago, they decided to come up with a different protocol called IMAP. And IMAP lets these email programs leave the stuff on the server, but mark it as read. And so you can see your email from anywhere. And so it's the newer of the email protocols. And it's also an abbreviation, but I don't remember what it stands for offhand. Yeah, the internet world is full of what we call TLAs, or three-letter acronyms, right? So POP is a classic TLA. So at any rate, that's what POP and IMAP are. They're just the protocols that are used, the format that's used for when the email messages get transferred across the internet. That's separate from whether they're encrypted. When you're using a website that has HTTPS, that email is not only formatted as IMAP, but it also gets scrambled or encrypted. And Gmail always has HTTPS. The S stands for secure. Yes, Danielle.
Yes, I have about 2,000 emails at the bottom of my computer. Tells me how many. Somehow I got a lot of them on there after I had gotten some help from Google, and then ended up with all this stuff. Is there a way that I can get rid of many of them all at once?
You bet. We actually went over this yesterday.
Okay.
So, Judy will be sending around. You may just want to send around the information for both of these, Judy.
Yeah, what I just did in the email is I put in your entire series so they can click on it with all the handouts, all the recordings, they can click on those. And then putting the date for the one with the, automatically, filter the messages.
Yeah, the basic idea is if you're using Gmail, Gmail is really good at searching. Not surprisingly, it's Google. That's what they do, right? And so you can search for your emails. Like you want to say, I just want to get rid of everything that's older than a month. I'm not going to look at it anyway. And so there's a way of doing a search that says before : and maybe I say 5/1 to 2020, right? You have to actually say 2020/5/1, but you'll see that in the notes. And then that'll search and find all those old emails, and you can look through them. And if you want to just get rid of them all, you just click that checkbox on the top that we looked at today. And if there's a whole pile of them, then it'll also give you a link to just say, I want to not only see the first 50 or 100 of them, I just want to select all of them. And when you click on that, it will, let's say you've got 1,000 of them, then it'll select all 1,000 of them. And then when you click the little trash can, it'll say, do you want to do a bulk delete? And that's how you get rid of them. So it's not hard to do.
Thank you.
Hi, Lori.
Dave, the one thing I appreciate about mail is that you can sort based on who it came from. So I can see every email I got from Monique.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And if I wanted to, I could delete them or whatever I wanted to do. Is there any way to do that in Google, in Gmail?
There are sort options for the inbox. I don't believe that by sender is an option.
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
It is, yes.
I use that
Yeah,
constantly.
let me look at the inbox here.
What you can't do is sort by easily by size or some of the other categories that you get in mail.
Right.
So.
Oh, teach me how to sort by sender.
Okay, so all you do is hover your cursor over the, you know, the sender on the, here, let me share my screen.
And then while Judy is setting that up, it looks as though several people would like to have a repeat of the class or the series.
I don't think
just
we're
wanted to
going to
let you know.
repeat it because we recorded it. So I'm sending everybody all the recordings. So you can, you know, you can do that. We may repeat it further down the road, but not, I don't like to repeat things close together. So that's why we record them. So anyway, let's see here. So if I hover here on this particular contact and I right click, this box
I'm not seeing
pops
the
up.
screen, Judy. We're not seeing the.
Yeah,
I am.
Oh, sorry. I take it back. I was looking at the wrong spot. I apologize.
Okay, and you see this down here? Find emails from PAXTO, okay?
Yes.
Click on it.
Yeah, that's actually doing a search. That's not
And
doing a sort.
that's everybody, every email I have from that person.
Right. What I forgot to ask the question, but what they were talking about is a feature of some email programs where you can look at all of the emails in your inbox and see them sorted by sender.
Yeah, that you can do in Outlook.
If you look at what's
but
going
this
on there,
doesn't have that feature. So
right.
This is how you have to do it.
Right. And if you look in the search field up on top, it says from : blah, blah, blah. And that's the quick way of doing the same thing. Or if you click on the little down arrow to the right of the search box.
Yeah. So you can also.
There's multiple ways of doing the same thing, but it doesn't do exactly what she was asking. But that's absolutely right, Judy. Thanks.
Yeah, and like in Outlook, it's fantastic because you can search alphabetical order. They'll group everything together, and you can quickly run through it to delete lots of stuff. But
yeah, let me show you what I was talking about. There are a few options. So if I'm in my inbox settings page, it has this inbox type, and this does have a few sort options, but that's not one of them.
Yeah.
Right. So you can just see all of your unreads at the top, or what it thinks are important, and so on.
Dave, I have another question. What I have done is allowed Mail to connect with Gmail, and then in Mail I can do it. When I delete something in Mail, will it delete it in Gmail as well?
Yes.
Okay. So that's another way to get around it.
Yeah, so if there's a feature, I think what Laurie was getting at is if there's some feature in the Apple Mail program or another email program that you just love, then fine. If you mostly like Gmail, you could do most of your work there and then switch to that other program to do the thing that you like. If sorting your inbox by sender is something you do all the time, then maybe you mostly spend your time in that program and only go to Gmail when you want to do fancy searching or something it's better at. So that's a great point, Laurie. Okay, anybody else have their hand up? I can only see about half the people, yeah. Great, okay. Well, if, again, thanks for coming and asking great questions. I really appreciate it. And I'll be doing another one or two of these next week.
Yes, so there's this is the last one we have scheduled, Dave, which will be held on Thursday, July 23rd at 11:30 Mountain Time. And then I put the link in the email for that as well. So they'll have all of so I put your whole series, and then at the bottom included the one that's pending. So they'll get all of the recordings.
Right. So that's going to be the filtering.
Yeah, that's the filtering one.
Right. And again, a lot of these topics would normally be considered a little more advanced, but most of them aren't all that complicated. They're usually just presented poorly, which hopefully I haven't done again.
Great.
No, Dave, you don't.
You're wonderful.
But yeah, they're not that complicated. They really aren't. If you understand what labels mean, then all of a sudden it's no big deal. You just can have, think of them like stickers you put on things, right? Just like that's why they call them labels. So you can have multiple stickers on items, and in this case, multiple labels on emails. And that is a turns out to be a super powerful idea. You saw that those Senior Planet labels were also had other labels on them, and that way there's several different ways for me to easily get to them.
I have a question, Manette. I can't find the link. You said you put in a link about encryption. I only see the one for Gmail support.
It is there's two of them.
No, but maybe you sent it to an individual person.
Oh, okay.
And not to everyone, because it is not, I'm not catching
I'll
it.
put the encryption one into everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
The general thing that I would say is I don't treat email as a private channel, okay? Yeah, I've been using email since 1970, so a long time. So I've had, I was on what was called the ARPANET in those days, before the internet officially came into being, when the National Science Foundation took over what was originally a military network from the Advanced Research Projects Agency. And it had about a dozen colleges that were also connected, and I was at one of those. And I actually worked with the fellow who was in charge of the group at Bell Labs that did a lot of this work. And he always had two rules, but one of them I remember was, you know, he basically said that any email will undoubtedly be read in the worst possible way. So if you're angry, the second rule was don't email in anger, right? If you're angry, then don't click the send button. You know, leave it in the drafts or schedule it for later if you think you may not get back to it. But give yourself some time, and then think about how an email might be read in the worst possible way, and that is how a lot of people will read it, okay? And a lot of times you don't mean anything, but when you look at it, you say, oh yeah, I guess I can see how you'd read it that way, okay? And the other thing is, I've never considered email a private channel for confidential stuff, which is why I send encrypted files on a public channel. I consider it a public channel. It's not like tweeting, right? It's not like totally public, but it's really not secure, secure for financial things and other things that I would be saying I really want a secure channel for this information. So if I send somebody a financial document, I will always encrypt it. And I will separately tell them the password. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll ask them for a password, and then I'll send it to them with that password. And so, yeah, even if it says that it's going to do this encrypted confidential thing, I would still be skeptical.
Dave,
that it can't be hacked.
When I first started using email at a high-tech company, I'll never forget the first time I typed something in all caps, thinking it would be easier for some people to read. Right. And my boss said, do you know that you're yelling? In email, all caps is yelling. You're screaming at them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, don't do that. And then I worked with a lawyer at that company. I was dealing with confidential legal things. And she said, just consider every email. And would you want this projected on the wall, 8 feet by 8 feet in front of a jury? And if you're happy to have your email on the wall in front of a jury, then hit send. I don't.
Yeah, that's a variant of the same rule.
Never use sarcasm in an email, ever.
Yeah.
It is not understood.
Yeah, so they started these emojis, right, to say I'm
Right.
joking, but it's very easy for somebody to miss that
Mhm.
and not get the joke, right?
Yeah.
And take it as not sarcastic or not meant to be a joke. Yeah. So you want to be real careful. It turns out when we talk to each other, you know, we're old folks, so we actually are used to physically talking to each other or Zooming with each other, right? Not just texting. Yeah, when you go to an email or text-based channel, you lose a lot, and facial expressions and tone of voice and all this stuff that we take for granted doesn't come across in a text-based channel. That's what email is, fundamentally.
And just to elaborate on that, Dave, since I'm a speech language pathologist, the true shocking fact is that 90% of our communication is what's called suprasegmental. It's not the words. 90%, it's the tone of voice, it's the facial expression, it's how loud, it's how your body is. And when you take out 90% of the cues and only leave the words, mischief happens.
Yeah.
Mischief. I love that.
No, it's very true. You'd probably, my wife is a literacy specialist and a speech pathologist. You'd probably enjoy talking to her.
Mm. Love to meet her.
Lynn Kuhn is her name. I'll ask her if she knows you. But anyways, how are we doing?
I think
any more comments, questions?
You keep offering such blasé, non-interesting classes. Now, if I put that in an email, I'd be in trouble.
Oh, this was
Well,
great.
not only that, Judy will get you to teach a class on speech pathology.
Yeah.
And I want to be a forensic linguist, so you know.
Oh wow!
I just haven't been able to afford to go to school for it. I did put the Senior Planet hotline number in the chat. If you have additional technology questions outside of what Dave covered in the session today, that is the number you can call to get additional information for your technology questions.
Yeah, let me go ahead and put my email in here. And if you're on a computer, you can save the chat by clicking on the little 3-dot button down the bottom.
But you don't have to do that. I'm putting everything in the email. Make it easy for you.
All right, good.
Dave, quick question about Tuesday and Thursdays, your 9:30 session. I've got some specific issues, like I'm getting a message that my disk is almost full and my iCloud, which is shocking. And that would be a one-on-one kind of thing, or can I bring that to Tuesday?
No, you can definitely do it. What we do is people bring up whatever they want, and if it doesn't seem like it's interesting to other people, then we might take it to a one-on-one. Or if it's going to be either something I need to research, you know, I may, hopefully I don't come off it as a know-it-all, because I really don't. And so if I don't understand how to solve the problem, I may take it to a one-on-one session that gives me time to research it. And then sometimes, if it's not too busy, I will show people how I figure this stuff out by having you watch me Google things and what do I type in to get the results and how do I find out the answers to these things. It sort of teach them to fish rather than giving them fish thing.
That might be an interesting class, is searching. I forgot the wild card sign and so forth. That would be a great class, Judy.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes.
Arlene, go ahead.
Yes, well, that's Lori.
Yes.
What your question was, is what happened for me when I finally called Google, and I ended up paying, I don't know, $2.99 a month, you know, probably for the rest of my life, because I said, this is just too much. And I've gotten thousands of emails, like old emails, and I can't get them off. That's why I asked the question. So that may be.
So Arlene, what do you use, a Mac or a PC or?
No, I'm back.
A Mac. Yeah, if you come on one of the Thursday ones,
I will.
the reason that I encourage people to do that is any question you have, other people have the same problem.
Yes, yes.
So when we solve it for you, we'll solve it for several people. But I have actually done some one-on-one sessions just for email cleaning, so that's another option.
Arlene, I would almost.
I have seen people with tens of thousands of emails.
Yeah.
So a couple thousand isn't too bad.
Oh my gosh. I have 19,000 that have been read and 12,000 that are unread. So, but that's not
the blessing of the free space that Google gives you is that it's like having a house that's too big. You can have lots of clutter, and you don't run into the problem of being over cluttered for a while. Yeah.
I think what mine is, Dave, is I've been automatically recording my Zoom webcasts because I do therapy online with kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference, but I don't know where to find all those recordings in order to delete them.
Now, is this on, what device are you on when you're?
I'm on a Mac.
Yeah. What it's talking about is not the space on your Mac, but the space on your backup on the iCloud. So you probably have your documents set to automatically back up onto the cloud.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that as you add more and more stuff to your documents, then it's not only on your computer, it's also on the cloud, which gives you a couple of different options. One is to put your big stuff that you don't really need to have backed up into a place that is not going to back up. And there's a few ways to do that. Or you can pay them a little bit of money, $1 or a month will give you an extra chunk of space on the cloud. So the simplest solution, this is one of those problems that's solvable by money. Usually hard problems aren't solvable by money, but this is one that is not too hard and is solvable by money. So if you're willing to pay them a little bit more money, they'll give you more cloud space, and you won't think about it. It just gets back. And as you record your Zoom calls, they'll not only be on your computer, but if anything ever happened, they're backed up to the cloud. And also you could go to another place and go to iCloud.com and watch your videos, right? Because your cloud is visible through any browser.
Yeah.
And you just have to log in.
That's
So
Arlene's solution.
yeah. So I mean, I pay them. I do back up all my Apple devices on the cloud, and I pay them $1 a month or whatever it is that I now need.
I'm already paying $1.99, so that means I'm really.
Yeah, I don't know what the next level is. It might be $5 a month.
I'm
so you can just, this is sort of the, if you don't want to think about backing up, that's a simple solution. Okay, they have also in the Apple world, there's a thing, Time Machine.
And I do that also.
You do that also, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's
because I have a lot of graphic content. I'm a technical writer, and I have a lot of graphic content. I have a lot of research. I actually have sitting to my left a terabyte hard drive. And so my research and stuff, once I'm done using it, and my video or anything, once I'm done using it, all go to there, and I access it just like a regular drive. And then when I'm really preserving it forever, then I might put it to a cloud storage. But I actually go hard drive first, then to cloud storage for my very critical, just to keep from.
So right. I mean, what Manet's talking about is, in the case of the iCloud backup, there's settings on your Mac, iCloud settings that determine what gets backed up. And let's say it's your documents. I think there's a way to explicitly tell it not to back up a particular folder, or just move it to a folder that's not under documents. Right. There's often a videos folder that's not under documents. Just move them over there, And that'll also solve the problem at the cost of not having a cloud-based backup of those videos. That's the choice you have to make. So if you want them backed up on the cloud, you'll have to pay for it. If you don't care, just move them to a place that doesn't get backed up to the cloud. That's another simple solution.
And only back up to the cloud those key critical, ones that you need to preserve.
The Mac has settings for what gets backed up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm on the Mac.
Yeah, right.
Thank you all so much.
All right.
Great. We've probably exhausted Judy's patience here.
No. It's just that Monette and I are supposed to meet now, and
okay.
Monette, I need to just grab something 10 minutes.
I have to go grab food too. I haven't eaten either.
I'm starting to sink here. So goodbye, everybody. And Monette, I'll see you. And is there a link in that attachment that you sent, or should I send you a link?
I did not set it up as a Zoom. So I'll set up a Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's not on the major account.
Well,
and I'll send you the link.
Thank you, Monette and Judy, for all your
Thank you, Dave.
Oh,
okay.
Dave, thank you. And Dave,
thanks everybody.
Dave, you got to download the chat and read all the accolades for you.
Okay. All right, I will do that.
Have a good day, Jermaine. Bye,
Okay.
Rosalie. Bye, Phyllis. Bye, Doris. Bye, Esther.
I've been hearing everything, but I've been moving around because they're taking the stump out of my house from the tree. So I've been concerned about
that. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks for
Bye.
everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you,
Judy.
It's been wonderful.
And thanks, Dave and Monier.